Evo Morales arrives in Mexico after facing political persecution and death threats in Bolivia. Thousands march from El Alto to the city of La Paz to oppose the coup and its leaders. And protesters block highways and flood into Santiago as a general strike paralyzes Chile. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I am Doris Polo. Bolivia's deposed president Evo Morales has arrived in Mexico after being granted political asylum by the government of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
I want to tell you that we are very thankful because the President of Mexico have saved our lives. Why did I say that? On the 9th of November, on Saturday, when I arrived in the tropical zone of Cochabamba, a member of the security team of the army informed us and showed me messages and told me of phone calls that they should hand me over in exchange for $50,000 the day before we resigned. And that's why we are very grateful for saving our lives. But I also want to say, brothers and sisters, while I'm alive, we will continue in politics. As long as I live, the struggle will continue, and we are sure that the peoples of the world have the right to free themselves, to liberate themselves. We thought we had finished with oppression and discrimination, with humiliation, but it's reappearing with other groups who don't respect life, much less their country. It will be part of the ideological and programmatic struggle and cultural and social struggle. Brothers and sisters, if there is something, if I have committed some crime, it's being indigenous. If the Vice President has committed some crime, it's implementing social programs for the humble and the poorest sectors, seeking social justice. And I'm convinced that there will only be peace when we can guarantee social justice.
Thousands marched from El Alto to the city of La Paz against the coup leaders. Indigenous women and men, workers, social movements reject the coup and chant against Mesa and Camacho. But police and the armed forces have taken to the streets as well to repress protesters. Thousands carry the Wipala flags. They are about to arrive to Murillo Square outside the National Assembly, where congressmen are trying to begin with an extraordinary session, but there is no quorum. The mass party representatives are not present. Meanwhile, opposition lawmaker Jeannie Áñez, who could become Bolivia's interim president, has insisted that there must be an extraordinary session of the Legislative Assembly this afternoon to break the political deadlock in the country. However, lawmakers from Evo Morales' mass party are blocking the session.
Afterwards, in an extraordinary way, we have summoned for 4 p.m. an assembly session to consider and approve the resignation of the President and Vice President of the state. We think that it's much more important for the country to be at peace, for people to be calm, and to take into account formalities. I think a country can go ahead without a state leader, and us, lawmakers, are in the obligation to respond to all Bolivians. Vandalism, chaos. Not a single Bolivian wants more. I appeal to all to not go through the dramatic situation we went through yesterday, the situation of terror we lived through yesterday.
The main trade union confederation in Bolivia, the COB, has given the leaders of the coup d'etat 24 hours to restore constitutional order or face an indefinite strike.
Facing this disorder, chaos, constitutional order downfall, and faced with a political crisis that is out of control, the COB Union Federation, as the only central workers' organization, says to the civic and political leaders who have caused all this chaos, division, and pain among the Bolivian people that we give you 24 hours to establish constitutional order, social peace, and the unity of the Bolivian people, and avoid more bloodshed, tears, mourning, and violence. Our country does not deserve this. History will judge them one day. But meanwhile, if there is no solution within 24 hours, the COB will be forced to call an indefinite general strike with the mobilization of all its regional sections and affiliates to La Paz to guarantee and restore order, social peace, and respect to democracy of the country.
And from the middle of the march in La Paz, our correspondent Alejandro Kirk has the latest.
They came by the thousands from El Alto to downtown La Paz to express rage, indignation. Their symbol, the flag of the indigenous people of Latin America, was disrespected, humiliated by the cops, by the police, by the army, who took it away from their uniforms. Today they apologized, but that is not enough. And one more thing, they are protesting because Evo Morales was forced to leave the country. They say, literally, Mesa, Camacho, we want your head. That's what they are saying. They want Evo Morales back. They want their country back. That's what they say, and they say it loud.
That was Alejandro Kirk with that report. Now, Venezuelans have also been marching in solidarity with Bolivia. Members of the Venezuelan Socialist Party and other social movements headed through Caracas after a rally outside the Bolivian embassy. They saluted the Bolivian people for their resistance to the coup and warned the United States not to try to promote a similar coup in Venezuela.
I think that only the people can save the people. What happened in Bolivia was a coup d'etat, but the people are taking to the streets against neoliberalism. And we are in the streets to defend President Nicolás Maduro and to defend the people of Bolivia.
Evo, we Venezuelans are with you. As President Nicolás Maduro says, the Bolivian people are resisting. And if they think they can come here and do the same as they are doing in Bolivia, they are badly mistaken.
What happened in Bolivia is shameful for all decent people in the world. It was a blow by the international right led by the government of Donald Trump, with a very bitter racist right in Bolivia. But the most important thing is how the Bolivian people are reacting and resisting. So we in the International Congress of Afro-Descendants in Venezuela are in solidarity with the people of Bolivia.
And the South African Communist Party, or SACP, has unequivocally condemned the coup in Bolivia, calling it an intensification of the imperialist aggression against the people of Latin America. A statement released by the party said the externally organized coup against the democratically elected government of President Evo Morales amounts to the suppression of the Bolivian people's right to self-determination and sovereignty. The SACP has also called on all working-class movements across the world to mobilize against the coup. We will take a short break. When we come back, world leaders have slammed the coup in Bolivia. We'll have details in a moment. Welcome back. Social movements, unions and political organizations in Argentina marched to the Bolivian embassy in rejection to the coup in the plurinational state of Bolivia.
Evo is not alone was the slogan that the people shouted in rejection of the coup against President Evo Morales. A crowd with flags and posters of support that exceeded all expectations mobilized through the streets of Buenos Aires.
There is clearly an interest in silencing the voice of popular governments. Bolivia was a beacon of resistance, and they want to silence them. But we are not going to allow that fire to be extinguished. Their beacon will remain turned on, and Evo will continue to be the leader of the social movements in Bolivia.
With the image of President Evo Morales engraved in the heart of the people, in front of the Bolivian embassy, demonstrators accompanied Bolivian citizens who supported Morales with 88% of the votes from Argentina in October's general elections.
It's a complicated situation considering that it's a coup d'etat and that the armed forces are there and they are acting against the people. They represent an oligarchy and do not represent Mother Earth and the people who are against neoliberalism.
There was also strong rejection against President Mauricio Macri due to his silence regarding the coup. But in a historic event, career diplomats of the Argentinian Foreign Ministry contradicted the government and recognized that what happened in Bolivia was a coup.
The popular support for Evo is support for the plurinational people of Bolivia and for the Argentinian people. There are no differences. Imperialism does not forgive. The right does not believe in human rights or the redistribution of wealth. Imperialism destroys, but we do not lower our arms, and the fight will continue.
This is for the entire region, and does not only involve Bolivia. Today we are all Evo Morales. That's why we are here, Yankees out of Latin America.
Social organizations and political groups reject the ongoing violence in the neighboring country and denounce that the coup was carried out under the protection of imperialist and right-wing groups, responding to the agrarian and financial oligarchy of the Andean nation.
Shifting gears now, protesters in Chile have blocked a major highway and flooded into the capital, Santiago, after more than 100 organizations called a general strike. The stoppage has paralyzed much of the country. In its latest effort to quell protests, the government agreed on Sunday to rewrite the Pinochet-era constitution. Among the proposed changes are a better definition of human rights and their means of enforcement. But protesters say this is not the Constituent Assembly they are demanding, and it does not establish the state's responsibility to provide education and healthcare for all, which also one of the main demands of the millions of Chileans who have taken to the streets for 26 days now.
It took us 1 hour and a half to do 2 kilometers. I think no more than that. It's good. It's good that the people protest. It's okay for the town to mobilize. It's been around for a long time, almost 30 years of abuse.
Our correspondent in Santiago, Leonel Retamal, was there and has the latest.
Today, a general strike has been called by several workers' unions. Most of these unions had their differences before, but since the crisis Chile is facing began, they decided to join forces. Last week, they sent a letter to President Piñera requesting better measures for healthcare, education, public transport, housing, pensions, and so forth. It's everything that the people have been demanding during the protests, which only a new constitution can achieve. According to several social organizations, this is the core for significant change in Chilean progressive politics, and therefore many obstacles also need to be changed. Last Sunday, President Piñera put a so-called Constituent Congress forward, without explaining what it really is. Despite the futile intentions of his ministers to clarify it, they were even contradicting each other. This has been seen as a strategy to buy some time and analyze people's reaction, but all in all, there's nothing concrete in the government's speech. On the other hand, social movements have a solid proposal, a constituent assembly. A referendum is part of this, as it will facilitate change to all the obstacles that the current constitution puts in place, and the people's participation is fundamental for those changes.
Duque has appointed Carlos Holmes Trujillo as the new defense minister. His predecessor, Guillermo Botero, resigned last week after it was revealed that he had concealed the death of 8 miners killed in a military bombing raid against dissidents from the FARC.
Dr. Carlos Holmes Trujillo has been Minister of Education, has been Minister of the Interior, has been an extraordinary Chancellor, and now assumes the position of Defense Minister.
As Trinidad and Tobago prepares for local government polls on December 2nd, the Election and Boundaries Commission said nomination day went off without a hitch on Monday. The ruling People's National Movement, or PNM, and Opposition United National Congress, or UNC, are the only two parties to submit full teams of 139 candidates each. Several small parties are also contesting certain areas. Meanwhile, a few people from both the PNM and UNC are running as independents in crucial battleground areas. Registration day was a colorful event, with some candidates parading to EBC offices to Tassa music or accompanied by teams of high-ranking party officials such as ministers, MPs and senators. Coming up, Spain will see the formation of a coalition to form a minority government. We'll unpack this and more after the break. Welcome back. The political situation in Bolivia is a reflection of how Western countries continue pushing a regime change agenda on a global scale. We spoke to Zimbabwean political analyst and journalist Gibson Nikadzino about the African perspective regarding what has happened in Bolivia. Here's what he had to say.
Folding in Bolivia currently are hard lessons to Africa. When you look at the geopolitics, the issue of resources, and the issue of total control of a nation's interests. So what's happening in Bolivia today is typically what happened to Libya, to Tunisia, to the DRC, and also even in Egypt, where the foreign powers, they are meddling in politics that are going on in Africa just to pursue their interests. So as a hard lesson, African nation states should be able to protect their sovereignty, and at the same time, the most important aspect is to know that in this era of contemporary politics, no country will be able to protect another country's interests unless people from this country make that in order that we want to have our interests protected by this state. This only means that the interests of any country are there to be protected by the people of that country. So it's quite a sad development of what's happening in Bolivia, but also it's an eye-opener to African states so that they know who to run to. That is their people they should run to when they want to protect their interests and sovereignty. These neo-colonial powers, they are interested in causing confusion, loot resources, and at the same time cause chaos in which they want to be saviors.
The leaders of the Podemos and PSOE parties in Spain have reached an agreement to form a coalition government following Sunday's general election. Podemos leader Pablo Iglesias will take the role of vice president in a government led by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. The PSOE are the biggest party with 120 seats, but fall short of the necessary 176 needed to govern. The left-wing Podemos took 35 seats. Both parties lost seats on Sunday as Sanchez's electoral gamble failed to pay off. But together they will be able to form a minority government. A legal advisor to the European Court of Justice has said that Spain cannot prevent jailed Catalan separatist leader Oriol Junqueras from taking up his seat as a member of the European Parliament. The court's advocate general has advised that only voters can decide who becomes a member of parliament, and that Junqueras possesses the legal right to ask legislators to decide whether to uphold his immunity. Junqueras has been detained in Spain since 2017. He was one of the leaders involved in the organization of the independence referendum deemed illegal by Spanish authorities. But the Supreme Court has refused to allow him out of jail to take the oath of office after he was elected as a member of the European Parliament back in May.
I propose to the court to give the following response with regards to the prejudicial questions posed by the Supreme Tribunal. 1. A person whose election to the European Parliament has been officially declared by the relevant authority of the member state in which that election took place acquires, solely as a result of that fact, and from that moment, the status of a member of the Parliament.
South African trade unions have rejected a plan by the national airline to retrench almost 1,000 workers. The Association of Cabin Crew Workers and the National Union of Metal Workers said the plan by South African Airways is irresponsible, especially at a time when the country is grappling with high unemployment. The unions have accused management of using the threat of job cuts to force workers to drop their demands for an 8% pay rise. And staying in South Africa, a strike by bus drivers in the capital, Pretoria, has left thousands of commuters stranded. Bus drivers withdrew their services on Monday following a collapse of talks between the workers' union and the employer, Pretoria City Council. The workers are demanding an upward adjustment of their pay scale. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has officially opened the International Conference on Population and Development. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the Nairobi meeting, otherwise referred to as the ICPD 25 Summit. The three-day event covers various themes, including advancing gender equality and securing sexual and reproductive health for all. World leaders, representatives of NGOs, business leaders and community groups will outline their commitment to end preventable maternal deaths, meet women's demands for family planning, and stop violence against women and girls by the year 2030.
Let us bear in mind the fact that the most important participants in this summit are actually not in this conference. And you may be wondering who I am referring to. I am referring to the 1 in 5 women from all corners of the world that this year alone will experience gender-based violence, most likely from someone who is close to them.
And we leave you with a message of solidarity for Evo Morales from the musician and founder of Pink Floyd, Roger Waters.
Evo Morales, if you see this, more power to you. I hope your exile is short. Your people need you. They need a leader like you. You're the first indigenous leader in the whole of South America. You've done a great job. You've pulled so many of your people out of poverty and given them a sense of dignity and wealth. You brought the rule of law and you brought democracy. And that, hopefully, only on a temporary basis, has been ripped away from them by greed.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.
Aquí en Acapulco